3 people have been killed in the Greek capital Athens after a bank was set ablaze during an anti-government demonstration. Protesters allegedly threw Molotov cocktails into the bank, setting it on fire. Much of the city was paralyzed today as unions called a 24-hour general strike to protest against the government's sweeping austerity measures. Clashes erupted in several areas, with the police firing tear gas at the demonstrators.
Firefighters reached this woman just in time, but help came too late for 3 of her colleagues. The branch of the Marfin Ignatia Bank in downtown Athens was gutted after masked protesters set the building alight. The people inside were trapped by the flames. It was the climax of a day of demonstrations that spiraled out of control. There was rioting across much of the city center. Protesters smashed shop windows and set fire to vehicles, including a TV satellite truck. Clashes too outside the parliament, where protesters hurled rocks, paving stones and gasoline bombs as they tried to storm the building. Police responded with tear gas. The demonstrations had begun peacefully. Tens of thousands turned out to voice their anger over government spending cuts.
The people who should be paying for this mess are getting off scot-free.
Whatever the government passes now, we can still block it. We can make a difference with mass protests and strikes.
Trade unions say they are appalled by the rioting. It appears they failed to anticipate such an escalation of violence.
And we now go live to Athens. I have on the line our correspondent Brian Williams. Brian, this is indeed a very serious situation with 3 people now dead. Do you expect these protests to escalate further? What's the situation there like?
Well, at the moment, the main protesters broke it up. We've now got the bands, small bands of these anarchists, the people who are believed responsible for the death of the 3 bank workers. They have a habit of throwing these Molotov cocktails at banks, at any business-type district. The Prime Minister, George Papandreou, is doing his best to calm the situation. He's told us a meeting of Parliament. He said demonstrations are one thing, murder is another thing. He's appealed for calm among the population, and he's asked for the President of Greece to call a meeting of all the political parties so there can be at least some political unity on the issue.
Now, will all this turmoil on the streets and resistance to the government's austerity measures undermine Athens' ability to implement them?
Well, the government has a healthy enough majority. They simply need a simple majority to get it through Parliament. So there's no doubt that the measures will go through. The worry is that if these protests do indeed escalate again, the government may have to start backtracking, may have to give some concessions to the demonstrators, and then the government, Greece, would then be in trouble with the EU, Germany in particular, and the IMF. So the big worry is if the protests go on, the government may be forced into some backtracking on the measures.
Right, Brian Williams in Athens, thank you very much for that live update.
Three killed inside a firebombed bank as pitched battles erupt during a general strike against Greek austerity measures. The Athens stock markets now dropped 10% in 2 days. Hello and welcome. You're watching France 24. Tragedy has marred a one-day general strike in Athens amid riots against austerity measures. A firebomb attack on the Marfin Bank. Inside, 3 killed. Parliament observing a minute of silence after the biggest day of protest since George Papandreou's socialist-led government took over in the fall.
The first victims of Greece's social unrest, killed in a blaze when protesters threw Molotov cocktails into a bank. Black-hooded anarchists attacked police with rocks and petrol bombs and smashed shop windows on Wednesday. Police responded with tear gas and flash bombs. At least 50,000 demonstrators have marched through central Athens in the biggest protest since the crisis began. They're furious at savage tax rises and brutal spending cuts. The 24-hour general strike has paralysed public transport and grounded all flights. Protesters have even occupied the Acropolis, Greece's best-known landmark. Greece has promised to save €30 billion in just 3 years in return for a €110 billion bailout from Europe and the IMF, meaning wages and pensions will be slashed. Furious Greeks say the programme has been imposed on them from abroad, likening it to a foreign occupation. We are hostages to the aid package, says this newspaper headline. This could just be the beginning. Austerity measures will have to get tougher if the debt reduction target is to be met. And as cuts bite deeper, more and more Greeks will take to the streets.
Also on RT, protests in Greece turned violent with 3 people killed as rioters set fire to a bank during a general strike over the government's austerity measures.
The bank with the fire brigade saying that 3 people killed in this fire, and it was set by some hooded youths who were part of these protests. The strikes paralysing the whole of Athens, other parts of the country as well. Transport has really been affected. Flights in and out of the country have been suspended. Ferries are sitting in ports, they're not moving anywhere. Shops are closed. And this is all because of these austerity measures that the Greek government is having to bring in if they are to receive an international financial bailout and avoid defaulting on its debt. Just speaking to our correspondent earlier, Malcolm Brabant, he was telling us the depth of public anger over this, saying they're angry at the government, they're angry at foreigners over the austerity program. Ordinary people, civil servants, feel that they're the ones having to pay, whereas it's others who should be, particularly politicians, it seems, today. And we have been told that those austerity measures are going to affect people massively. They're going to have wage freezes. There's a hiring freeze as well in the civil service. The government, though, telling the people of Greece it has no choice. These are conditions that have been imposed on the government by the International Monetary Fund, by other European nations in return for Greece's bailout package. These pictures will be watched not only across the world but very, very closely in Europe by other European countries facing their own economic pressures, particularly perhaps Spain and Portugal today, but also in Germany as well, where they are deciding how much to contribute to this bailout package. But just to bring you the news that we've had in the last half an hour or so, things have worsened in Athens as 3 people have been killed in a fire at a bank in the middle of the capital. A very tense scene outside Parliament, as you can see here in Athens. We'll continue to bring you up to date with events in Athens here on BBC World News, so do stay with us. Greek police have fired tear gas at protesters in Athens as demonstrators